My name is jsakota, Data and Research Manager at LASA. I'm here with Lauren Kinney, Senior Data and Research Analyst. We're going to talk about the Youth Count Survey as part of the Youth Count training for the 2017 Greater Los Angeles Homeless Count. Thank you for paying attention. The Youth Count Survey is a tool used to collect data from the unsheltered homeless population under the age of 25. When we say unsheltered, according to the definition from the Housing and Urban Development, Department of Housing and Urban Development, unsheltered means an individual or family with a primary nighttime residence that is a public or private place not designed for or ordinarily used as a regular sleeping accommodation for human beings, including a car, park, abandoned buildings, bus or train station, airport, or camping ground. Remember, we're only looking for unsheltered youth and young families under the age of 25. We're not serving anybody who are shelters, which means that they're residing in housing, emergency shelter, traditional housing, safe havens, or those using vouchers. Unsheltered youth tend to be found in larger groups and may not be as easily identified as homeless. These are the survey materials that you'll have to bring to the field when you're going out to do the surveys. The survey instrument, including mobile device and backup paper surveys, census tract map, clipboard, $10 away gift cards, referral cards, and refusal log. There are two formats that we provide this year for the youth count. The left-hand side is the paper format of the survey, and then the right-hand side is the Qualtrics link that you can access through your mobile phone or tablet. We really encourage you to complete the survey using mobile or tablet format as much as possible. And if you fill out the paper surveys, the data validator at each deployment site will manually enter the responses to the electronic version of the survey. Now, I would like to show where you'll be going. We already pre-selected all the census tracts that you will be going to do the survey. Those are the locations with enough homeless individuals that minimum surveys can be completed, and you may find more youth in a certain part of the census tract you're in, but do not stop there. You have to canvass the entire tract. Just to give you an idea, look at the map on the right. This is the map that you will be bringing with you when you're going out to do the surveys. And please pay attention to this blue boundaries. This is the boundary for the census tract that you are surveying and canvassing, and make sure that you're staying inside of the boundary. If you go outside of the boundary and survey in those areas, those are not going to be counted toward the total homeless count. The first step of the survey is to approach and ask. Try not to hold your clipboard in front of you when first interacting with the person. Try to appear natural and comfortable, and be assertive and stay confident. At the end of the day, what you really need to have an answer to is, will you take the survey? And sometimes people refuse to participate, and that's okay. Don't be discouraged. It is not personal. Some people just don't like taking surveys. And if you feel that it's appropriate, you can try asking one more time to make sure that you explain that all answers are going to be confidential and voluntary. If they still say no, fill out the refusal log to track some basic information about them using your best judgment. And this will help you and help us with planning for the future. This is an example of a refusal log. You're going to be using this form to log refusals and basic information about those who refuse to take the survey. So, for example, you can fill out the location where you found the youth. It could be a closest interaction or an address point. And you can add, based on your best judgment, you can add gender, age category, and race and ethnicity. The last part is additional information. If possible, you can log perceived indicators of homelessness, the reason why you decided to approach the youth, and also reason for refusal. If possible, it would be great if you could log why that person refused to participate. Now, let's take a quick look at administering the survey instrument. So the survey is in 5 parts: pre-survey, screening questions, required questions, optional questions, and post-survey questions. Before we dive deeper into the 5 sections, I would like to remind you a couple of things. Anything written in bold means that you should say them out loud. Italics means you shouldn't say them out loud. Do not read don't know or declined out loud in any cases. Ask the optional questions if the time permits. And make sure to use the response card when asking health or domestic violence related questions. Now I'm going to hand over to Lauren Kinney, who is going to take us through the pre-survey and some screening questions.
The pre-survey data includes geographic information as well as your initials, so we can know where the survey was taken and who administered it. First, select the service planning area and census tract where you're conducting the survey. Make sure to get your SPA or service planning area and census tract from your map. Include the location or intersection where the survey is conducted, using first a street and then a cross street, and if there is no cross street, use another landmark such as a park or other area. Next, you want to include your initials for the interviewer ID. Please use the same initials each time. Next, read out the confidentiality agreement. Read the whole thing clearly. If the respondent does not understand, repeat the statement a second time. Next, we want to know some screening questions that will determine eligibility for the respondent. Respondents who have taken the survey before are not eligible to take it a second time, and so if the answer is yes, they've taken the survey already, it will go to the end. The survey is only intended for youth who are 24 years old or younger. So you want to ask the respondent their date of birth. If the birth date they provide is before the date on this slide, they will be ineligible. The web survey will automatically determine eligibility, and you will see the slide here that says, "I'm sorry, we are only surveying youth under 25. Thank you for your time." Youth who are housed or are not eligible, and youth in shelters are included in the shelter count. For this reason, we ask the following. Where have you spent most of your nights in the last 30 days? You want to wait for a response and then select the choice closest to their answer. If they need a clarification, ask, have you spent more than 2 weeks out of the past month in the same place? If so, where was that? Youth are not eligible if they select any of the responses that are in this red box. If we get this far, we know that eligibility has been determined. First, you want to ask the initials of the respondent.
And then the first question that we ask about demographic characteristics of the respondent is gender identity. The question you will ask is, what is your gender identity? And wait for their response, and then choose the best one that describes the gender identity of the respondent. For ethnicity, you will have to ask the question, do you identify as Hispanic or Latino? And if the answer is yes, you can read each category that starts with yes and choose all that apply. So it'll be these 4 selections. And as a reminder, you do not need to say don't know or declined as an option. We also ask a question related to the race of the respondent. So the question is, what race do you identify with? Make sure to check all that applies based on the response. And if you can't find the response from the respondent out of all these options, you may choose other and specify in the blanks. For sexual orientation, you may ask which of the following best represent your sexual orientation. And you can choose one that describes the best based on the response you get from the respondent. The next questions are regarding military service and discharge status. These will help us understand the veteran status of the respondent. First, we ask 2 questions. Have you served on active duty in the U.S. Army Forces? Second, were you called into active duty as a member of National Guard or as a reservist? And then the follow-up question is regarding discharge status. So we ask, what is your discharge status? And If none of the below answers matches the answer given to you, you can select unverified. The next 4 questions are regarding the chronicity of their homelessness. These will help us determine whether the respondent is chronically homeless or not. So the first question is regarding duration. So the question is, how long have you been homeless this time? And depending on the respondent, they may give you an answer in days, weeks, months, or years. So depending on the response, you can actually fill out any of the 4 options. And after that, we also ask about episodes. So first we ask, including this time, how many separate times have you experienced homelessness on the street, in a vehicle, or in shelters in the past year? And we also ask the same question for the past 3 years. And then lastly, what we ask is, in the past year, have you stayed in shelters or on the streets for longer than a year? And depending on the response you hear, you can select yes, no, and then as a reminder, you don't have to say declined or don't know as an option. One more question. This is regarding whether they lived in a vehicle or in an encampment. In the past 6 months, have you lived in any of the following situations? So what you will need to do is to list each category below and then wait for the respondent to say yes or no. Have you lived in a car? Yes or no? Have you lived in a van? Yes or no? Have you lived in an RV or camper? Have you lived in a tent? Have you lived in a makeshift shelter? And depending on the response, for example, your respondent said, have you lived in a car? Yes. Then you will select the car. And then you will see a follow-up question popping up. In each of the following situations, can you tell me how many people live with you, not including yourself? So if the respondent says there were 2 people living with me inside a car, then what you will type is 2. If the respondent says, I would like to decline to answer, then what you do is you will leave the text box blank. And if the respondent lived alone, you can just enter 0 in the text box. Now we're going to go over to the family section. I will hand it over to Lauren Kinney.
Some youth are living alone, while others are in a family. If you're interviewing a single adult, the family section will be skipped automatically. For the purposes of this survey, a family must have 1 person under 18. Only complete 1 survey per family. For TAY, or transition age youth, that are 18 to 24 years of age, that are couples or minor siblings that are under 18, complete 1 survey per individual. To determine household size, ask the following question. Not including yourself, how many adults and children are there in your household? The web survey will automatically skip the family section if there are no members of their household that are under the age of 18. If there are members of the household under the age of 18, you'll see this prompt, and you will ask, what are the initials or a nickname of other people in your household from oldest to youngest? This will help you ask family questions later. In this example, the family member is named SC. So you'll ask the question, how is SC related to you? This question first helps us identify how the family member is related to the respondent. The remaining questions you ask are the same questions you ask the respondent, but this time you want to know demographic information about the members of their family. And as a reminder, you may not see this section, and that is okay. For both the family section and the individual section, you'll be using response cards for specific questions. Some survey questions are especially sensitive and personal. These questions regard health conditions as well as domestic violence and sex trafficking. For the health condition questions, you'll be asked to ask this question for both family members and the respondent. For domestic violence and sex trafficking, you'll ask only about the respondent. And the response cards are there to help protect the respondent's confidentiality. When you get to the family health conditions or the individual health condition sections, this is what you'll see on your device. When you see this, go right to your response card. This is what the response card will look like. When using the response card, first ask the question, then show the respondents the options. Ask them to tell you the number that corresponds with their response. For example, 9 for traumatic brain injury. Once you receive your responses, record them on your device. This is what the domestic violence and sex trafficking questions will look like on your device. It may be unsafe to ask these questions if someone is close by listening to the answers, or someone is directing the respondent on how to answer other questions. If you feel that the question is not safe to even ask, mark Safety Concern on your device and move to the next set of questions. However, if you feel that it is safe to ask the questions, move to a private location if possible. If they agree to answer and it's safe to ask, use your response card. And this is what the response card will look like. Again, you want to ask the question, show the respondent the options, ask them to tell you the number that corresponds with their response, and then record that response on your device.
So now we have optional question sections left, and there are 3 questions. And as the title says, the remaining questions are optional. And you can ask these questions only if the time permits. So the first of the optional questions is regarding the time when they were last housed. So the question is, before the last time you lost your housing, where were you living? Some people, you can see the options below. And if somebody answers Los Angeles County, you're going to see a follow-up question popping up. What city or community did you live in before you lost your home? And this is to capture the specific neighborhood or area within the city or the county. Because as we all know, LA County and the city are very large. So the purpose of this question is to kind of drill down deeper in terms of where exactly they were living before they lost their housing. So if their answer is LA or LA City, please ask a follow-up question of what neighborhood were you in? And as you can see, there is a drop-down menu available for you so that you can look up the name of the city or the community. The last question of the optional question section is around importance of services. So this question is to understand what youth values the most in terms of the services offered to themselves. So you will have to explain the fact that this question is framed as a scale question. So from a scale 1 to 5, 1 is not important, 2, 5 is very important. How important are the following services to you? And you can list all the services that we are showing through the screen or the paper survey, if you will, and let the youth choose, rate them based on number, the scale from 1 to 5. And if they say declined or don't know, you can leave the response blank. The last section is for post-survey and for staff use only. Now that we concluded the survey, you can give the $10 Subway gift card to the respondent. And then once the card is received, you can click yes, or you can check yes as a response. And then you can mark anything that you observed about the respondent regarding their physical health condition, mental illness, or alcohol or drug abuse. Also, if we also want to know whether the survey was completed 100% or whether you had to skip some of the questions. So this is where you will have to mark whether the survey was complete or partial. So just to summarize, here are some tips in terms of using the electronic survey. You want to ensure that your device is fully charged, because without battery, you won't be able to complete the surveys. And skip patterns and eligibility determination is built into the online survey, so you can just follow along. The survey will redirect to the beginning once you have finished and the step section has been submitted. You still need to use the response cards and refusal log for the online survey, just as you would for the paper survey.
In case you can't use the mobile survey, use your paper survey as a backup. Take note of these directions to fill the paper survey out properly. First, make sure to fill in all the bubbles completely and only fill in one answer per choice for questions that have circles. For squares, you can fill in multiple choices per question and make sure to fill those out completely as well. If you make a mistake, cross out the filled bubble or the square and fill in the correct bubble or square. For text boxes, fill in the blank. Write legibly because someone else will need to read your responses later. Use black ink only. Only write text in fields where text is expected. Do not write notes all over the survey. Follow the logic prompts in red that will guide you to follow the survey just like the electronic survey would. So if you see bold, that means you should say it. Italics means you shouldn't say it. Single or forced choice responses have a circular bubble. So in those cases, you only put one choice in. Red means skip logic, directions on which questions you won't need to ask depending on a certain answer. So make sure to read those very clearly each time. Multiple choice responses have square boxes. And also remember, do not say declined or don't know or safety concern for any of the questions.
So as a conclusion, I would like to summarize the survey flow so that you better understand how the survey goes. So first, you approach and introduce yourself and ask for participation. And if they refuse, you will have to fill out the refusal log. But if the respondent says yes, then you will have to start filling out the admin section if you're using the electronic survey, and then state confidentiality agreement and ask the screening questions. If the respondent did not pass the screening question, then you'll have to thank the participant and move on. But if the participant passed the screening questions, then you can move to a quiet location and continue the survey. You can ask required and optional questions, and then at the end, you fill out the staff use only section and thank participant and provide the survey Subway gift card. This concludes our training part 2, and what we would like to tell you is that practice makes it perfect. So make sure to practice with a partner. You will see that there is a link to previous survey. You can type in this link so that you can open up the test survey and then you can start practicing. Please note that the link is actually case sensitive. Make sure that you are understood and speak clearly, and make sure that they're not confused by your presentation of the questions. Make sure that you're comfortable with the phrasing of the questions before you begin surveying in the field. And good luck. If you have any questions about today's training, please contact Jose or myself through the email addresses listed here. Thank you so much.